How are we doing, guys? It's JH the boxing fan here, back with another video, and there's lots to catch up on following last night's action. Before we come to that, the YouTube algorithms have spoken to me. They've informed me that 80% of you watching my videos are non-subscribers. If that's you, I'd ask that you click the subscribe button. It really helps me out to reach a wider audience and hopefully achieve my goal of spending more time making these videos. I'm also informed that 1 minute 30 is about the average time people are clicking on. So if that is you, then stick around. You might just like what you hear. So guys, what I wanted to say here before we go on is that the reason for me making these videos, I'll come on to it another time, but the promise I will make is that I'm going to give my objective opinion based on what I see. You won't always agree with me, and in fact, I encourage that. You'll never hear me say that I'm right and you're wrong. You'll never hear me call a boxer a quitter. I just don't feel that I'm in a position to do that. But other than that, it's anything goes, and I'll try and give my opinion as objectively as I possibly can, because there's already enough bias in the sport already. Without you and I, let's be clear, we're the fans of the sport with the passion that we have. Without that, the boxers wouldn't get the remuneration that they fully deserve when they put it on for our entertainment. So it all comes from a good place. I wanted to just touch on the issue, revisit the issue that we mentioned last time about drugs testing, following the news that Benn was going to return on the undercard of that show in Orlando last night, as we saw. And that news got announced on the same day I recorded my last video. I'm a Benn fan. I've followed his career, and I genuinely believe he has all the chance to be a real contender in the welterweight division. But in terms of was I comfortable with his return last night, I've seen some of the reaction from Fight Disciples and various other outlets, and I would agree that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with it. I think I asked myself what would have made me comfortable, and I think for me it was a case of him having served a period of suspension. And basically had that system of retribution in place to serve his ban accordingly. He's been out the ring for nearly 18 months, and for some people that still wouldn't be enough. And I understand that it's an emotive issue when people have strong opinions on it, and rightfully so. The point I was making is that the system is where the failure is for me. It's a systemic issue, and Benn isn't solely responsible. As we know, he failed 2 VADA tests in the build-up to his fight with Chris Eubank Jr. last year, and for reasons unbeknown, UCAD and the British Box Board of Control haven't been able to issue him with a suspension. And that's not his fault, and that's what I was sort of getting at, is that I think we want to see real change in the sport. We need to stop these people who are making money off the back of him, the promoters and alike. And we need to try and get a system in place that's more uniform, so that we don't see boxers who are able to surrender their licenses and fight in other jurisdictions. I suspect, in all honesty, we still would have seen him fighting even had he been issued a suspension by UCAD. But as we know, he was cleared by National Anti-Doping. As such, whilst he's not a licence holder here, he was cleared to fight in America, as he did. And we'll come on to that and how he got on a bit later on in the video. So let's get into it. Let's make a start. Only one place to start, really. The rematch last night between Joe Joyce and Zhang at Wembley. Wow, what a shot. I didn't expect that. I was surprised and a bit disappointed to sort of see that Joyce didn't seem to make the adjustments from the first fight. But give Zhang his credit. Fantastic performance from him. Joyce had obviously come in heavier. I think he put about 30 pounds on. And perhaps I can only assume that he'd done that because he perhaps didn't feel like his punch resistance was there in the first fight. I hope that's the reason, and that there wasn't sort of an issue around training or anything like that. I can't imagine he wouldn't have taken training seriously given the magnitude of that fight, although it was quite a short turnaround of only about, I think, 5 or 6 months between the 2 fights. But I think it just came down to size and ultimately boxing IQ, and I think something that Zhang is perhaps underestimated for. You could see that after the first round they sort of figuring each other out and quite tentative. When Zhang started to throw his shots, Joyce was so concerned about that left power, that left hand that caused him so much trouble last time. You could see he sort of had his right hand up, high guard, and he was trying to figure out and worried about that left hand. But the combinations that Zhang started to throw in the second round really took Joyce by surprise. He was throwing the sort of left cross hook and then bringing the right hook in. And in fact, the shot that put him down in the third round, Joyce just didn't see it coming. He sort of leant back and then stepped in to throw a shot of his own, and then was caught flush on the chin by that right hook. And the fight was over from there, really. He bravely got to his feet, but didn't quite make the count. And the referee had no choice but to call it off. So a stunning knockdown performance. And for Joyce now, I feel like it's difficult to know where he goes. I mean, he's 38 years old. It's going to be a couple of years before he's sort of back in contention. I'm sure there'll still be domestic level fights out there for him if he wants them. And I suppose he's got the advantage of knowing that he hasn't been beaten like that from two different opponents back to back. It's come from the same opponent. And sometimes, in boxing, you come up against someone who's just got your number. We've seen it with Fury and Wilder, with AJ and Usyk, and I think it's the same here. I think Zhang, it's just ultimately to beat Zhang, I think it's going to take someone who's quicker, someone who can get in and do their work and get out and get him into the later rounds. Joe Joyce has sort of traditionally been durable, and he's won a lot of fights just by outlasting his opponent, trading and getting them out. And he could do that against most, but I think the size and power and skill set of Zhang meant he just wasn't able to do it really. Stylistically, he just wasn't right for him. So interesting to see what comes of Zhang now. He's obviously will be mandated WBA, I believe, mandatory. I suspect that if the Fury Usyk fight's there to be made next year, that will be mandated by the governing bodies. But Zhang's put himself right in position. I mean, in terms of how he fares against those top guys, the likes of Usyk, Fury, AJ, Wilder, I still probably would think that they will have too much for him. But you just never know, and it's exciting to see if he does come up against one of those guys, how he gets on. And he probably will be avoided just because he does cause those problems, given the size of him and the style. Interesting couple of fights on the undercard. I mean, it wasn't sort of the best undercard, really. I think it was Anthony Yard had a pretty straightforward run out and a good knockout win for Moses Atuma, who I think is a really exciting prospect in the heavyweight game. Look out for him. He's going to cause a lot of people problems as he goes up through his career. And obviously over in America, we had a DAZN card featuring Richardson Hitchins, the American lightweight, who I think put on a really good performance in his performance against Cepeda. He's a real skillful boxer, and the Americans are really good at producing these lightweights at the moment, likes of Haney and Davis, Prograis, and he's trying to get himself in the mix. The only concern for me would be, does he carry the knockout power? You can see how skillful he is, but that would be the only sort of doubt there, as to whether he carries that knockout power to trouble some of those top guys in that division. And obviously there was the fight between Benn and the Mexican Orzorco, which went to points and was quite a comfortable win in the end for Benn on points in his comeback fight at 154. I mean, I just don't understand really why they're everyone's obsessed with putting Benn up to up in the weight to super welter and talk about him going up to 160 to fight Eubank Jr. Well, I do understand why he wants to go up to 160 to fight Eubank Jr. Obviously, because there's money to be made in that fight. But to me, he's not a big welterweight. He makes that weight comfortably. It's not like, I can understand it if he was struggling to make welterweight and they sort of saying he's outgrown that weight and he needs to go up. But it seems to me like he's going up there for no reason other than trying to convince us that he can mix it with middleweights. I don't believe for a minute he stands any chance of stopping Eubank at middleweight. I actually think that would be a mismatch. And I'm sure that's the fight that's going to get made if they can make it. And I think that would be a mismatch. I think Eubank will be too big for Bennett. And I think that performance last night sort of just proves that, you know, he keeps talking about his knockout power, and maybe he does possess that down at welter, but you come up against bigger guys, doesn't always transfer. You carry that power through, so it might just make them think. It might just make them think whether they're doing the right thing. Because for me, Conor Benn down at welterweight is can really challenge for honours. Although I appreciate he's got that advantage of being able to blame the weight as an excuse and come back down once he's made that money if he needs to. On the undercard over on that show, we also had a good fight, Jessica McCaskill in the ladies' game. Jessica McCaskill, Sandy Ryan. I thought Sandy Ryan was actually quite unfortunate in that one. Jessica McCaskill's quite experienced and she's a warrior, but I did feel that Sandy Ryan probably won that fight, and the usual conversations will be had there about advantage given to the home boxer, which is a common theme, something that we need to see addressed, I think. So guys, that's it for me really, in terms of my reaction from last night. Lots of exciting boxing news to come. We've got so many exciting fights being made between now and the end of the year. Next week in Vegas, Canelo Alvarez versus Jamal Charlo up at super middle for the undisputed. We've got the IBF cruiserweight title between Jordan Thompson and Joe Apataya. We've got Josh Warrington against Lee Wood. A massive light heavyweight domestic blockbuster between Dan Aziz, Josh Buatsi. Someone's always got to go there. And just announced at the end of the year in December, down at flyweight, the title fight between Sonny Edwards and Bam Rodriguez. Someone's always got to go there. And for those of you who are partial to a bit of crossover boxing, or should we call it entertainment, as we know, Tyson Fury versus Ngannou, and of course KSI against Tommy Fury. So lots of exciting stuff to come between now and the end of the year. Catch all the reaction to it here, JH Boxing Fan. Thanks for watching, guys.